Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Deceit. Bryson Hargrove stared at the notification on his phone. Another charge at La Pearl Restaurant. $342.76. The third time this month his wife's credit card had been used there, always on Wednesday afternoons when she claimed to be at her book club. Bryson wasn't supposed to see these notifications, but he'd never removed himself as an authorized user on her account after setting it up years ago. A simple oversight that would prove devastating for Melanie. At 54, Bryson had built his fortune methodically over 3 decades. Starting with a small landscaping business after college, he'd expanded into commercial property development, eventually creating Hargrove Enterprises. People who knew him professionally respected his ruthless efficiency and uncanny foresight. Few knew the pain that had forged him. His childhood in rural Pennsylvania had been defined by abandonment. A father who walked out when he was 7 and a mother who drowned her sorrows in whatever bottle was cheapest. He'd promised himself 2 things early on. He would never depend on anyone, and he would never forgive betrayal. When he met Melanie Westbrook at 30, he'd been immediately captivated by her warmth and seeming authenticity. She'd been different from the social climbers who typically circled him, or so he thought. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage within a year, and children followed soon after. Rachel, now 24, and Preston, 22. For 24 years, Bryson had convinced himself he'd broken the cycle, created the stable family he never had. He'd worked relentlessly, providing a lifestyle few could imagine. The 6-bedroom house in Havenbrook Estates, private schools, luxury vacations, and trust funds. Bryson set his phone down and gazed out the window of his home office. The sprawling garden Melanie had insisted on installing last year, a $175,000 passion project, stretched before him. Had she been entertaining her lover among those carefully arranged flower beds? The thought burned in his chest. His executive assistant, Larissa, knocked gently before entering with a stack of documents. The financial reports for the Westlake property and the updated contracts for the Riverfront Plaza, she said, placing them on his desk. Larissa had been with him for 15 years, the only person who truly understood how he operated. Thank you. Any word from Calvin about the Belridge acquisition? He sent over the preliminary assessment. The hotel is undervalued by at least 20%. It could be a lucrative addition to your portfolio. Bryson nodded. Schedule a meeting for next week. And Larissa, I need you to handle something of a personal nature. She raised an eyebrow, but remained professionally composed. Of course. I need comprehensive surveillance on Melanie. Discreet, thorough, and immediate. Use Thorne. He's expensive, but worth it. If Larissa was surprised, she didn't show it. I'll make the arrangements today. After she left, Bryson opened his safe and removed a leather-bound journal. Inside were handwritten notes documenting every sacrifice he'd made, every milestone in building his empire. He'd started at the day he launched his first business, determined to create a record of his journey from nothing to something. He turned to a blank page and wrote a single line. The day I discovered the price of trust. 3 days later, Thorne delivered a thick envelope to Bryson's office after hours. The photos inside confirmed what he already knew: Melanie and a man named Wade Thornton, a lifestyle coach, who'd moved to town 2 years ago. The timestamps showed regular Wednesday meetings, followed by visits to an upscale apartment complex Bryson didn't recognize. Bryson didn't rage or break down. Instead, he felt a cold clarity wash over him, the same state of mind that had guided his most successful business decisions. He would dismantle this betrayal with the same precision he used to acquire failing businesses and transform them. That night at dinner, he watched Melanie laugh and talk about charity functions as if she hadn't spent the afternoon in another man's bed. Their children were absent, Rachel planning her upcoming wedding in Chicago, Preston at his 2nd year of medical school. Bryson studied his wife's face, memorizing the lines around her eyes, the way her lips curled when she lied. You seem distracted, Melanie said, reaching for her wine glass. Just thinking about the future, Bryson replied, raising his glass. To new beginnings. She smiled, oblivious to the double meaning, and clinked her glass against his. Chapter 2. Mapping the Betrayal. The next morning, Bryson summoned his most trusted lawyer, Harrison Wells, to his office. I need to restructure some assets, Bryson explained, sliding a list across the desk. Quietly and immediately, Harrison scanned the document, his expression remaining neutral. Preparing for something specific. Insurance against predictable disappointments, Bryson replied. I want everything transferred within 2 weeks. Nothing traceable back to me directly. These properties include your family home and most of your visible assets, Harrison noted. Melanie would need to sign off on. She won't be signing anything. These are all holdings she doesn't know exist. For 20 years, Bryson had maintained a parallel portfolio unknown to Melanie or their children. While they enjoyed the fruits of his official success, he quietly acquired properties under shell companies and trusts. It wasn't about tax evasion. He paid every cent he owed, but about maintaining control. And the Belridge Hotel? Harrison asked, noting its absence from a list. That's a separate matter. I'll handle it personally. After Harrison left, Bryson called Larissa. I need everything we have on Wade Thornton. Background, finances, weaknesses. The information arrived that afternoon. Wade Thornton, 48, had reinvented himself multiple times. Failed actor, supplement salesman, mindfulness guru, and now lifestyle coach. He specialized in helping affluent women rediscover their purpose. His business operated on cash payments and private sessions. His client list included 3 divorcees who'd received substantial settlements after leaving long-term marriages. Bryson recognized the pattern immediately. Wade wasn't just sleeping with Melanie. He was methodically preparing her to leave with as much money as possible. That evening, Bryson visited Preston at medical school, taking him to dinner at an upscale restaurant near campus. How are the studies going? He asked as they ate. Brutal, but worth it, Preston replied. I'm thinking of specializing in orthopedic surgery. Bryson nodded approvingly. Your mother mentioned you needed additional funds for some special program? Preston looked confused. No, I'm fully covered by the trust. Did she say I needed money? My mistake, Bryson said smoothly. Must have misunderstood. Later that night, he checked Melanie's recent bank withdrawals, $50,000 over the past 3 months, all in cash. Money supposedly for Preston's special medical program. Another lie to unravel. The following day, Bryson toured the Belridge Hotel, a once grand establishment that had fallen into disrepair. The owner, eager to sell, highlighted its potential. The wedding venue alone could be revitalized into something spectacular, the owner said, leading him through a ballroom with soaring ceilings. With your vision, this could be the premier destination for high-end events in the region. Bryson's phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Dad, we found the perfect venue for the wedding. The Grand Ballroom at Belridge Hotel. Mom's going to call you about the deposit. He smiled at the coincidence, or perhaps fate, and turned to the owner. I'll take it. Full asking price, but I have conditions. The sale remains confidential, and I want it completed within 10 days. That night, as Bryson reviewed more surveillance photos, his phone rang. Rachel's voice bubbled with excitement. Dad, have you talked to Mom? She's being weird about the venue deposit. I haven't, sweetheart. What's happening? We found this amazing place, the Belridge. It's perfect, but needs a deposit by next week to secure the date. Mom was supposed to call you. I'll handle it, he promised. How are the other wedding plans coming along? Great. Garrett's parents are handling the rehearsal dinner. Oh, and Mom's been amazing. She and her friend Wade have been helping with all the details. Bryson's grip tightened on the phone. Wait, yeah, Mom's life coach, or whatever. He knows the owner of this amazing florist and got us a huge discount. After the call, Bryson sat in his darkened office, the pieces falling into place. Wade wasn't just preparing to help Melanie leave. He was ingratiating himself with their daughter, positioning himself as part of the family's future. Bryson opened his journal and wrote, The parasite has reached the 2nd generation. Extraction must be complete. Chapter 3. the first countermove. The acquisition of Belridge Hotel was completed in record time, with ownership obscured through a maze of shell companies. Only Harrison and Larissa knew of Bryson's connection to the property. He immediately authorized renovations on the ballroom, ensuring it would be ready for Rachel's wedding date. Melanie continued her Wednesday book club meetings, unaware of Bryson's growing knowledge. He maintained his routine, giving no indication that anything had changed. Each night, he added to his journal, meticulously documenting her lies and his plans. 3 months before the wedding, Bryson implemented the first phase of his strategy. He arranged a meeting with Calvin Reeves, his finance director, and Marcus Bellamy, the bank's relationship manager. "I want to consolidate some accounts," Bryson explained. "Specifically, I need to separate the wedding fund from our joint holdings." Marcus nodded. "The $175,000 set aside for Rachel's wedding? Easy enough. We'll need Mrs. Hargrove's signature as well." Actually, Bryson slid a document across the table. "The original deposit was made solely from my business proceeds. Melanie was added as a courtesy, but legally, those funds remain mine." Calvin confirmed this with documentation, and Marcus reluctantly processed the transfer. "Is everything all right, Mr. Hargrove?" Marcus asked carefully. "Perfect," Bryson assured him. "Just preparing for upcoming celebrations." The next day, Bryson met Rachel for lunch. She'd flown in to finalize wedding details with Melanie. "How's the planning going?" he asked. "Great, but Mom's being super controlling. She vetoed my choice of photographer because he doesn't understand her vision." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Oh, and she's making this weird seating chart where you're basically hidden behind a column." Bryson kept his expression neutral. "I'm sure she has her reasons." "Yeah, Wade suggested it would minimize tension if you weren't prominently featured. I told them both that's ridiculous. You're walking me down the aisle, for God's sake." "Wade has input on the seating arrangements?" Bryson asked mildly. Rachel shrugged. "He's been helping Mom with everything. She says he has an artist's eye for these things." She lowered her voice. "Between us, I think she might be dating him. They have this weird energy." "And how do you feel about that?" "Honestly, it's awkward. But you and Mom have been like roommates for years, Dad. Everyone's noticed." The comment stung more than Bryson expected. Had he been so focused on providing that he'd failed to notice his marriage hollowing out from within? That evening, Bryson returned home to find Melanie arranging flowers in the kitchen, humming to herself. "You seem happy," he observed. "Just enjoying the creative process," she replied. "Rachel's wedding is coming together beautifully. I spoke with her today. She mentioned Wade has been helping with the arrangements." Melanie's hands faltered slightly. "He has excellent taste and connections with vendors. How thoughtful of your life coach to be so involved with our daughter's wedding." "He's a friend, Bryson. Something you might understand if you had any interests beyond work." Bryson nodded slowly. "Speaking of work, I'll be traveling next week. Business in Chicago." "Fine," Melanie said dismissively. "Rachel and I have plenty to do without you underfoot." The coldness in her tone confirmed what the photos had suggested. Not just infidelity, but contempt. Bryson added it to his mental ledger of debts to be collected. 2 days later, Bryson was reviewing renovation plans for the Belridge when Larissa entered with an urgent expression. "You need to see this," she said, handing him her tablet. On the screen was an email Thorne had intercepted between Melanie and Wade. "My love, we will be in Chicago next week. The perfect time to finalize everything. I've spoken with my lawyer about expediting matters once we have the wedding behind us. Rachel still insists on him walking her down the aisle, but I've arranged the seating to minimize his presence after that. The photographer has been instructed to focus on you as the family friend rather than be in group shots. The wedding fund is secure in the joint account. Once R is married, we'll proceed with the next phase. He will never know what hit him until it's too late. Forever yours, M." Bryson read it twice, then set the tablet down. "Send Thorne to Chicago. I want him to make my presence there very visible. Then follow Wade while I'm supposedly away." That night, Bryson transferred the wedding fund to his private account, then sent Melanie a screenshot with a simple message. "Planning something?" His phone rang immediately. Melanie's voice was shrill with panic. "What have you done?" "That money is for Rachel's wedding." "Is it?" Bryson asked calmly. Because your email suggests it had a different purpose. Silence fell on the line. You've been reading my emails, she finally said, her voice hard. You've been planning to leave me through our daughter's wedding, he countered, while sleeping with a con man who targets wealthy housewives. Wade loves me, she hissed. He sees me as more than a trophy or an accessory to your success. Is that what the money was for? Your new life with Wade? Rachel's wedding will happen with or without your money, Melanie snapped. I've already spoken with my parents. They'll cover it. Bryson laughed softly. Your parents who live on a fixed income? Who regularly ask us for money? That should be interesting. You're a bastard, Bryson. Perhaps. But I'm a bastard who reads the fine print. Check our prenups sometime. Infidelity clauses work both ways. He ended the call and waited. 3 minutes later, his phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. This isn't over. You'll regret this. Bryson smiled into the darkness of his office. No, Melanie, he whispered to himself. You will. Chapter 4. Pawns and Players. The confrontation over the wedding fund marked a turning point. The pretense of normalcy evaporated, replaced by Cold War tactics throughout the house. Melanie moved into the guest bedroom without explanation. Bryson doubled his working hours, returning home only to sleep. Their few interactions were witnessed by the household staff, who whispered among themselves about the tension. Bryson observed Melanie's growing desperation as she made urgent calls to her parents and met with Wade in increasingly public locations. A week after the wedding fund incident, Rachel called Bryson in tears. Mom says you stole the wedding money. What's going on? Bryson sighed. It's complicated, sweetheart. Your mother and I are working through some issues. What issues? Nobody tells me anything. The venue needs payment by Friday, or we lose the date. The venue will be taken care of, he assured her. I promise. After calming Rachel, Bryson called the manager of the Bellridge, actually his newly appointed proxy, and arranged for Rachel's date to be secured without payment as a courtesy. That evening, he found Melanie in the kitchen, aggressively chopping vegetables. I spoke with Rachel, he said. She's upset. Melanie pointed the knife at him. Fix it. Give the money back. So you can funnel it to your escape fund? I don't think so. This isn't about me. It's about our daughter's wedding. Bryson leaned against the counter. Interesting how your concern for Rachel only surfaces when your plans are threatened. You don't know anything, Melanie snapped. I know Wade Thornton has cleaned out 3 wealthy women in the past 5 years. I know you've withdrawn $50,000 in cash that you claimed was for Preston's education. I know you've been preparing divorce papers with that overpriced attorney in the Westbrook building. Melanie's face paled. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting my interests, Bryson corrected. Something you clearly stopped caring about long ago. What do you want? She asked, her voice suddenly weary. I want you to remember something, Bryson said quietly. I built everything we have from nothing. I survived things that would have broken most men. If you think you can take what's mine without consequences, you've forgotten who I am. He left her standing there, knife still in hand, and retreated to his office to make a call. Harrison, initiate the asset protection protocol we discussed, and contact the Bellridge. I want to make some specific arrangements for the wedding. The next day, Preston arrived home unexpectedly. Surprise visit, he explained, hugging Bryson in the driveway. Thought I'd check on wedding plans. Bryson studied his son's face, noting the tension around his eyes. Rachel called you, didn't she? Preston sighed. She said you and Mom are fighting about money, that the wedding might be canceled. The wedding will happen as planned, Bryson assured him. Your mother and I are having disagreements about certain arrangements. Inside, Melanie's face lit up at the sight of Preston. She embraced him fiercely, shooting a triumphant look at Bryson over their son's shoulder. Over dinner, the conversation remained superficially normal, though Bryson noted how Melanie repeatedly emphasized her contributions to the children's upbringing. Your father was always working, she reminded them. I was the one attending every game, every recital. Because someone had to earn the money for private schools and luxury vacations, Bryson countered mildly. Preston looked between them, confusion evident. What's really going on? Rachel's freaking out, and you two are sniping at each other. Melanie reached for her wine glass. Your father is being difficult about the wedding arrangements. I'm being realistic about finances, Bryson corrected, and questioning some of your mother's choices. Like what? Preston demanded. Bryson met Melanie's gaze across the table. Like her relationship with Wade Thornton. Silence fell over the dining room. Preston's eyes widened. The life coach guy? What about him? Ask your mother, Bryson suggested. Melanie's knuckles whitened around her glass. Wade is a friend who's helping with wedding preparations. Your father is imagining things because he can't stand that I have a life outside this house. A life that includes afternoon visits to the Lakeview apartments? Bryson asked. Interesting venue for wedding planning. Preston looked between them, comprehension dawning. Mom, are you seeing this guy? This isn't an appropriate conversation, Melanie insisted, standing abruptly. I won't be interrogated in my own home. After she stormed out, Preston turned to Bryson. Is Mom having an affair? Bryson considered his son carefully. Preston had always been more sensitive than Rachel, more attuned to the undercurrents of family dynamics. Yes, Bryson said simply. For at least a year. Preston slumped in his chair. And the wedding fund? Secure, but not accessible to your mother, which has complicated her plans. What plans? To leave after the wedding with as much money as possible. Preston shook his head in disbelief. What are you going to do? Ensure that everyone faces the consequences of their choices, Bryson replied, starting with Mr. Thornton. The next morning, Bryson met Thorne at a cafe downtown. I have something interesting, the investigator said, sliding a folder across the table. Thornton's been meeting with someone beside your wife. The photos showed Wade in deep conversation with Garrett Phillips, Rachel's fiancé. They've met 3 times in the past 2 weeks, Thorne explained. Always in out-of-the-way places, always without your daughter's knowledge. Bryson studied the images. Find out what they're discussing. I want audio if possible. Already working on it. But there's more. Thorne handed over another document. Thornton just put a deposit on a house in Sedona, Arizona. Way beyond his apparent means. Using my money, Bryson murmured. How predictable. 2 days later, Thorne delivered a recording. Wade and Garrett sat in a parked car, their conversation captured clearly. Mrs. Hargrove says he's on to us, Garrett was saying. The wedding fund transfer. Don't worry about it, Wade replied. She has other resources. Once you're married to Rachel, you'll have access to her trust fund. But that doesn't kick in until she's 30. There are ways to access it earlier with the right legal approach. Mrs. Hargrove and I will handle Bryson. You focus on keeping Rachel happy until the wedding. And after, we all get what we deserve. Bryson listened to the recording twice, his expression unchanging. Then he called Harrison. I need Rachel's trust fund restructured immediately. Change the terms. She gets nothing if she divorces within 5 years of marriage. That's unusually restrictive, Harrison cautioned. It's necessary, Bryson replied. And I want ironclad documentation of why these changes were made. Evidence that will hold up in court when she eventually learns about it. Next, he called Rachel directly. Sweetheart, I've resolved the venue situation. It's secured for your date. Really? Mom said her parents had to step in because you were being difficult. Did she? Interesting. Actually, I handled it personally. I'd like to meet with you and Garrett tomorrow to go over some details. Dad, we're swamped with planning. It's important, Rachel. Trust me, the meeting never happened. That night, Melanie confronted Bryson in his office, face flushed with anger. What did you say to Preston? He's barely speaking to me. The truth, Bryson replied calmly. Something in short supply around here lately. You had no right. I had every right. He's my son, and he deserved to know why his family is falling apart. Melanie jabbed a finger at him. You're the one destroying this family with your controlling behavior. You've never supported my independence, my growth. Is that what you call sleeping with Wade Thornton? Growth? He appreciates me. He sees me as a person, not a possession. Bryson laughed coldly. He sees you as an ATM, Melanie. One that's about to run dry. You're wrong about him. And you're wrong if you think you can control Rachel's wedding to punish me. Rachel's wedding will proceed exactly as planned, Bryson assured her. I made certain of it. Melanie studied him suspiciously. What does that mean? It means I've secured the venue. It means the wedding will happen, despite your attempts to use it as leverage. My parents haven't paid a dime, Bryson finished for her. The venue called me directly after your check bounced. This was a calculated lie. There had been no check, but Melanie's reaction confirmed his suspicions. She'd been bluffing about her parents' financial support. Fine, she snapped, but I'm still in charge of the arrangements. Rachel wants me involved, not you. By all means, continue planning. Just understand that I'll be there, front and center, watching my daughter get married. No hidden seating, no minimal photos. Melanie's eyes narrowed. We'll see about that. After she left, Bryson received a text from Thorne with a screenshot of a message from Melanie to Wade. He knows more than we thought. Need to accelerate the timeline. Talk to G about moving things forward with R. Once they're married, we proceed immediately. Bryson smiled grimly and added the message to his growing file. The pieces were moving exactly as he'd anticipated. Chapter 5. Shifting Alliances. As the wedding approached, the Hargrove household existed in a state of carefully orchestrated chaos. Melanie threw herself into preparations, constantly on the phone with vendors and making trips to the Bell Ridge to supervise details. She avoided Bryson entirely, communicating through notes left on the kitchen counter or messages relayed through the housekeeper. Preston returned to medical school after a tense week at home, his relationship with Melanie noticeably strained. Rachel remained oblivious to the deeper currents, focused entirely on her rapidly approaching wedding day. Bryson maintained his distance from the planning, allowing Melanie to believe she controlled the process. Meanwhile, he met regularly with the actual management of the Bell Ridge, implementing subtle changes to the venue that would become significant later. 1 month before the wedding, Garrett requested a meeting with Bryson at his office. I appreciate you making time for me, sir, the young man said, shifting nervously in his chair. With all the wedding stress, we haven't had much chance to talk. Bryson studied his future son-in-law with clinical detachment. Garrett Phillips, 26, came from modest means but had cultivated an image of success. His investment firm position had been secured through connections rather than merit, a fact Bryson had confirmed through discreet inquiries. What's on your mind, Garrett? I want to discuss Rachel's future, our future together. He cleared his throat. Mrs. Hargrove mentioned there might be some financial arrangements being adjusted before the wedding. Did she? Bryson leaned back, expression neutral. What specifically? Something about Rachel's trust fund. Mrs. Hargrove suggested I speak with you directly about ensuring its availability after we're married. The brazenness of the approach almost impressed Bryson. The trust was established when Rachel was born. It matures when she turns 30. Yes, but Mrs. Hargrove mentioned there might be provisions for earlier access in certain circumstances. For housing, education, or a husband's investment opportunities? Bryson suggested mildly. Garrett flushed. I wouldn't put it that way. But Rachel and I have dreams, plans that require capital. Fascinating. And when did you start discussing these plans with Wade Thornton? The color drained from Garrett's face. I don't know what you mean. Let's not waste time, Garrett. I know about your meetings with Wade. I know about Melanie's affair. And I know about the plan to access Rachel's money after the wedding. Garrett swallowed hard. Mr. Hargrove, there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Bryson interrupted. But there is an opportunity. For you. What kind of opportunity? To choose the right side of this situation. Bryson slid a folder across the desk. These are records of Wade Thornton's past. 3 failed marriages, 2 bankruptcies, and several lawsuits from women claiming he defrauded them. Is that the man you want guiding your financial future? Garrett opened the folder hesitantly, scanning the documents inside. I didn't know. Clearly. You also didn't know that I've restructured Rachel's trust. If she divorces within 5 years of marriage, she gets nothing. And neither do you. That's not fair to Rachel. Perhaps not. But it's protection against predators like Wade and opportunists who might be influenced by them. Garrett closed the folder, his expression conflicted. What do you want from me? Information. A complete account of Wade and Melanie's plans. In return, I'll ensure your financial future with Rachel remains secure, provided your intentions toward my daughter are genuine. And if I refuse? Bryson smiled thinly. Then I share these documents with Rachel before the wedding, including transcripts of your conversations with Wade about accessing her money. The choice was clear. Garrett broke, revealing everything. Wade and Melanie planned to leave immediately after the wedding, using money she'd been siphoning from household accounts. Wade had convinced Melanie that Bryson had hidden millions she was entitled to. Garrett's role was to help them access Rachel's trust fund by claiming they needed it for a house purchase, then funneling a portion back to Melanie and Wade. They said it was only fair, Garrett finished lamely, that you've been controlling the family money for years. And you believe them? I didn't know what to believe. Mrs. Hargrove was so convincing about how you'd mistreated her. Bryson nodded thoughtfully. Here's what happens next, Garrett. You'll continue meeting with Wade, but you'll report everything to me. You'll convince him you're still on board with the plan. And you'll keep Rachel completely in the dark. What if I can't do that? What if they suspect? Then you're not the man I thought you were. Bryson stood, signaling the end of the meeting. For Rachel's sake, I hope you're smarter than you've shown so far. After Garrett left, Bryson called Larissa. Arrange a meeting with the Belridge staff. It's time to finalize arrangements for the wedding day. The following weekend, Rachel and Garrett came for dinner. Bryson noted Garrett's nervous glances and Melanie's overly cheerful demeanor. Preston had returned home again, creating a facade of family unity. The final fittings went perfectly, Melanie announced over dessert. And the Belridge staff has been so accommodating with our requests. I'm glad to hear it, Bryson replied. I understand the venue has quite a history. The manager told us it was recently purchased by some investment group, Rachel said. They're renovating everything. We're lucky our wedding falls right after the ballroom restoration is completed. Very fortunate timing, Bryson agreed, catching Melanie's suspicious glance. After dinner, as Rachel showed Preston her wedding portfolio in the living room, Melanie cornered Bryson in the kitchen. What did you say to Garrett? He's been acting strangely since meeting with you. We had a frank discussion about his future with Rachel, Bryson replied. Financial expectations, career prospects, the usual father of the bride concerns. You threatened him. I educated him. There's a difference. Melanie stepped closer, lowering her voice. Listen carefully, Bryson. This wedding is happening exactly as planned. You will not interfere with Rachel's happiness. On that, we agree completely. And after the ceremony, you'll keep your distance during the reception. Wade will be there as my guest, and I won't have you creating a scene. Bryson raised an eyebrow. Bold of you to bring your lover to our daughter's wedding. He's my friend and has been instrumental in the planning. Rachel wants him there. Does she want him in the family photos too? Taking my place. Melanie's expression hardened. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Your pride. You need to control everyone and everything. No, Melanie. It's about loyalty. Something you abandoned the moment Wade Thornton showed interest in your bank accounts. Her hand struck his face with surprising force. You know nothing about what Wade and I have, she hissed. Bryson didn't flinch. I know enough. And soon, so will everyone else. The evening ended with strained goodbyes. As Rachel hugged Bryson, she whispered, Please be nice at the wedding, Dad. For me. I'll be exactly who I need to be, he promised, kissing her forehead. Later that night, Bryson received a text from Garrett. Meeting with W tomorrow. He wants to discuss contingency plans if Rachel resists early trust access. What should I do? Bryson replied. Tell him you found documents suggesting I've changed the trust terms. Act worried, but committed to the plan. The trap was baited. All that remained was to spring it at precisely the right moment. Chapter 6. The Breaking Point. 2 weeks before the wedding, tension in the Hargrove household reached unbearable levels. Melanie moved permanently into the guest room, communicating with Bryson only when absolutely necessary. Rachel visited frequently, engrossed in final preparations and oblivious to the undercurrents of hostility. Preston, however, saw everything clearly. He cornered Bryson in his office one evening. This situation is toxic, he stated flatly. Rachel deserves to know what's happening before her wedding. Bryson set aside the document he'd been reviewing. And what exactly would you have me tell her? That her mother is planning to abandon her family the moment the reception ends? That her fiancé was conspiring to access her trust fund? Was. Preston caught the past tense. What did you do, Dad? I gave Garrett a choice. He made the right one. Preston sank into a chair. This is so messed up. Why not just confront Mom publicly? In the charade? Because your sister deserves her wedding day, Bryson said simply. And because some lessons must be learned through consequences, not warnings. That's cold, even for you. Is it? Would Rachel believe me without evidence? Would she thank me for destroying her perfect day with accusations? Sometimes patience is the only path to justice. Preston studied his father's face. You've never forgiven Grandpa for leaving, have you? This is about more than Mom's affair. The observation struck closer than Bryson expected. This is about honoring commitments, he replied carefully. About facing the consequences of betrayal. Just don't hurt Rachel in the process. Whatever Mom's done, Rachel's innocent. I know. Bryson squeezed his son's shoulder. Trust me. The next day, final preparations for the wedding shifted into high gear. Melanie spent hours at the Bell Ridge, obsessing over details while Wade offered his expert guidance. Unbeknownst to them, every change they requested was reported directly to Bryson by the venue staff he secretly employed. 3 days before the wedding, Bryson visited the Bell Ridge himself, touring the renovated ballroom with the manager. Mrs. Hargrove has requested very specific seating arrangements, the manager explained, showing him the floor plan. Your table would be here, partially obscured by the floral installation. Bryson examined the layout. And the head table, here, with the bride and groom, Mrs. Hargrove, and Mr. Thornton at the center. You're positioned at the peripheral table. I see. And who approved this arrangement? Mrs. Hargrove was most insistent. She claimed to have your proxy. Bryson nodded thoughtfully. Make a note of her instructions, but prepare to implement these changes instead. He handed over an alternative seating chart. And ensure the staff understands who actually owns this establishment. The night before the rehearsal dinner, Rachel called Bryson in tears. Mom and I had a huge fight, she sobbed. She's insisting Wade sit at the head table as her +1. I told her it should be just family, and she completely lost it. What exactly did she say? Bryson asked calmly. That I was being selfish and ungrateful after everything she's done for the wedding. That Wade deserves recognition for his contributions. Then she said if I didn't agree, she might not come at all. Can you believe that? My own mother threatening to skip my wedding over seating arrangements. Where are you now? At Garrett's apartment. I can't face her tonight. Get some rest, Bryson advised. I'll handle your mother. When he arrived home, Melanie was pacing in the kitchen, phone in hand. Did you put Rachel up to this? She demanded as soon as he entered. Turning her against Wade? Rachel is capable of making her own judgments, Bryson replied. Apparently, she wants her wedding day to focus on her new marriage, not her mother's affair. It's not an affair. Wade and I have a meaningful relationship that you couldn't possibly understand. A relationship you're flaunting at our daughter's wedding, against her wishes. Melanie slammed her hand on the counter. I've done everything for that wedding. Every detail, every arrangement. Wade has been my support through all of it while you did nothing but criticize. Is that what you tell yourself? That the man pursuing your money has been supportive? That the daughter you're about to abandon should be grateful for your wedding planning expertise? I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm finally living for myself after 24 years of living for this family. Bryson stepped closer, his voice dangerously soft. Let me be clear, Melanie. You will not ruin Rachel's wedding with your selfishness. You will respect her wishes regarding seating arrangements, and you will maintain the dignity of this family until the moment the reception ends. Or what? She challenged. Or I will ensure that every guest learns exactly why our marriage is ending. With documentation. Melanie paled slightly, but maintained her defiance. You're bluffing. You wouldn't embarrass Rachel that way. Try me. Bryson turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. When you speak to Wade tonight, remind him that prenuptial agreements work both ways. In the event of infidelity, you leave with what you brought to the marriage. Nothing more. The morning of the rehearsal, Bryson received a text from Garrett. Wade is furious about the seating change. He and Em had a huge argument last night. They don't know I overheard, but they're still planning to leave after the reception. W says the old man won't know what hit him. Bryson smiled grimly and replied, "Keep me updated." The rehearsal proceeded with artificial cordiality. Melanie performed her role as mother of the bride flawlessly, though Bryson noted the strain around her eyes. Wade attended as a wedding coordinator, hovering at the periphery with a clipboard and an air of authority that fooled no one who knew the truth. At the rehearsal dinner, hosted by Garrett's parents at an upscale restaurant, the tension remained palpable beneath the veneer of celebration. Melanie kept her distance from Bryson, focusing her attention on Rachel and the Phillips family. As coffee was served, Rachel clinked her glass for attention. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she said, smiling radiantly. "Especially my parents, who have given me everything a daughter could ask for. Dad, I know you and Mom haven't always seen eye to eye on the wedding details, but I'm so grateful you resolved the venue issue. The Belridge is perfect." Bryson raised his glass in acknowledgement, catching Melanie's suspicious glance. Later, as guests were departing, Melanie cornered him in the restaurant's foyer. "What did you do about the venue?" she demanded in a harsh whisper. "I told you I handled it," Bryson replied mildly. "The Belridge management and I came to an understanding." "What kind of understanding?" "The kind that ensures our daughter gets the wedding she deserves, despite your attempts to sideline me from the event." Melanie's eyes narrowed. "If you've changed any of my arrangements..." "You'll what, Melanie? Cancel the wedding? Disappoint Rachel? Expose your affair to our friends and family? Think carefully about your next move." Before she could respond, Rachel appeared, wrapping her arms around both of them. "My two favorite people," she said happily. "Promise me you'll both be on your best behavior tomorrow." "Of course, sweetheart," Melanie assured her, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Always," Bryson agreed, returning Rachel's hug. As they walked to their separate cars, Melanie hissed under her breath, "This isn't over, Bryson." "No," he agreed quietly, "but it will be very soon." That night, alone in his study, Bryson received a final report from Thorne. Confirmation of airline tickets to Arizona in Melanie and Wade's names, departing the day after the wedding. The reservation at an exclusive resort, the newly purchased house waiting for them. He added the evidence to his file, then closed it with finality. Everything was prepared for the reckoning that would come with the dawn. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. Bryson dressed methodically in his tuxedo, reviewing his plan one final time. As he adjusted his tie, his phone buzzed with a text from Melanie. "Don't even think about showing up to your daughter's wedding," my wife snapped. "You'll ruin the photos. Rachel deserves better in her background." I just smiled, transferred the wedding fund back to my account, and sent her a screenshot. That was just step one. They still don't know I own the venue they bragged about. Bryson stared at the message in confusion before realizing it wasn't meant for him. Melanie had accidentally sent him a message intended for Wade. A message revealing not just their continued plotting, but her intention to bar him from the wedding entirely. He saved the screenshot and sent a single reply. "Message received." Then he called Harrison. "It's time. Implement the final phase." Chapter 7. Hidden Truths Revealed. The Belridge Hotel gleamed in the morning sunlight, its newly renovated facade a testament to the power of resources properly applied. Guests began arriving shortly before noon, admiring the grandeur of the historic building as they were escorted to the garden ceremony space. Bryson arrived early, greeting the venue staff, his staff, with quiet authority. He toured the ballroom where the reception would be held, confirming that his specific instructions had been implemented. Everything was in place, from the seating arrangement to the special presentation he'd prepared for later. In a private suite, Rachel prepared with her bridesmaids, blissfully focused on her special day. In another wing, Melanie directed vendors with military precision, Wade at her side playing the role of dedicated assistant. Preston found Bryson in the lobby an hour before the ceremony. "Mom's looking for you," he said. "She seems agitated." "I imagine she is," Bryson replied. "She sent me an interesting text this morning." He showed Preston the message. His son's eyes widened as he read. "She actually tried to ban you from the wedding? Your own daughter's wedding. Apparently, I'd ruined the photos." Preston shook his head in disbelief. "What are you going to do?" "Exactly what I planned from the beginning. Ensure that justice is properly served." At that moment, Melanie appeared, resplendent in her mother-of-the-bride gown, but with fury etched across her features. "Where have you been?" she demanded, pulling Bryson aside. "The photographer needs family photos before the ceremony." "I received your message about not showing up," Bryson replied calmly. "I assumed my presence wasn't required." Melanie blanched. "That wasn't. I didn't send it to me by mistake." "Clearly. Fortunately, I'm not as easily dismissed as you might hope." She grabbed his arm, lowering her voice. "Listen to me very carefully. Today is Rachel's day. Whatever issues we have stay buried until tomorrow. You will smile for photos, walk her down the aisle, and keep your distance from Wade." "Understood." Bryson removed her hand from his arm. "I will fulfill my obligations as Rachel's father. Beyond that, make no demands of me, Melanie. You forfeited that right when you plotted to exclude me from my daughter's wedding." Before she could respond, the wedding coordinator, the real one, hired by the venue, approached. "Mr. Hargrove, the photographer is ready for you in the garden." "Thank you." He nodded to Melanie. "Shall we maintain appearances for one last day?" The pre-ceremony photographs proceeded with artificial harmony. Bryson stood stoically beside Melanie, smiling when directed, maintaining perfect composure. Wade hovered nearby, ostensibly assisting the photographer, but actually keeping a watchful eye on Bryson. As the ceremony approached, Bryson found a moment alone with Rachel in the bridal suite. "You look beautiful," he told her, genuine emotion breaking through his carefully maintained facade. Rachel beamed, adjusting her veil. "Thanks, Dad. Are you and Mom behaving?" "Absolutely. Today is about you, not us." She took his hands in hers. "I know things haven't been great between you two lately, but I appreciate you putting that aside for me. I would do anything for you, Rachel. Never doubt that." When the music began, Bryson took his place beside Rachel at the garden entrance. As the guests rose in anticipation, he leaned down and whispered, "Whatever happens today, know that I love you and only want your happiness." She squeezed his arm in response, and they began their walk down the aisle. The ceremony itself was flawless. Vows exchanged, rings presented, tears shed by appropriate parties. Bryson maintained his dignified presence throughout, aware of Melanie's watchful gaze from the front row, where she sat with Wade conspicuously at her side. As the celebration moved to the reception, the true orchestration of Bryson's plan began to unfold. Guests entered the ballroom to find not the seating arrangement Melanie had demanded, but Bryson's corrected version. The bride and groom at the center of the head table, flanked by both parents, with Wade relegated to a distant table shared with distant cousins. Melanie's face tightened when she saw the arrangement, but with hundreds of guests watching, she could only take her assigned seat beside Rachel. Wade, after a moment's hesitation, moved toward his distant table, shooting daggers at Bryson with his eyes. The reception began with standard formalities: first dance, toasts, dinner service. Throughout it all, Bryson maintained cordial conversation with guests at the head table, ignoring Melanie's frigid silence beside him. After the main course was cleared, the venue manager approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with dancing, the owner of the Belridge would like to offer a special presentation in honor of the bride and groom." Melanie frowned in confusion. "What presentation? This wasn't in the schedule." Bryson merely smiled as the lights dimmed, and a large screen descended behind the head table. The manager continued, "Mr. Hargrove has prepared a tribute to the happy couple." A collective gasp swept through the room as the manager inadvertently revealed Bryson's ownership of the venue. Melanie turned to him, shock evident on her face. "You own the Belridge," she whispered furiously. "You bought our daughter's wedding venue without telling me." "Surprise," Bryson replied quietly as the presentation began. On screen, a montage of family photos appeared. Rachel growing up, family vacations, milestone celebrations. The assembled guests oohed and awed at the sentimental display. But then the tone shifted. Text appeared on screen. The truth behind today's celebration. What followed was a carefully edited series of communications. Melanie's email discussing minimizing Bryson's presence at the wedding, the accidental text about banning him entirely, Wade and Garrett's recorded conversation about accessing Rachel's trust fund, and finally, the airline reservations showing Melanie and Wade's planned departure the day after the wedding. The ballroom fell silent as the evidence mounted. Rachel stared at the screen in horror, while Garrett shifted uncomfortably beside her. Preston watched with grim satisfaction from a nearby table. And Melanie sat frozen, her carefully constructed facade crumbling with each damning revelation. When the lights came up, all eyes turned to the head table. Rachel was the first to break the silence. "Mom," her voice cracked with betrayal. "Is this true? Were you planning to leave right after my wedding?" Melanie struggled to find words. "Rachel, it's not what it looks like. Your father is manipulating. The evidence speaks for itself," Bryson interrupted calmly. "Every document, every recording, all authentic. I simply thought the truth should come to light before you embarked on your new life, Rachel. Some people aren't who they pretend to be." Wade stood from his distant table, attempting damage control. "This is outrageous. A complete violation of privacy and—" "Sit down, Mr. Thornton," Bryson commanded. "Unless you'd like me to share the background check detailing your history of defrauding wealthy women." The ballroom buzzed with shocked whispers. Rachel turned to Garrett, tears streaming down her face. "Did you know about this? Were you helping them get my trust fund?" Garrett took her hands. "I did, but I told your father everything. That's how he knew to protect you. I made a terrible mistake listening to them, Rachel. I'm so sorry." Melanie stood abruptly, her chair toppling backward. "How dare you humiliate me like this, Bryson? In front of everyone we know. How dare I?" Bryson's voice remained measured. "You plan to abandon our family, stealing our daughter's wedding fund in the process. You plotted to exclude me from her special day. You conspired with her fiancé to access her trust fund. And you have the audacity to speak of humiliation." Wade was making his way toward the exit, but found his path blocked by two security guards, Bryson's men, positioned there in anticipation. "Let me explain something to everyone here," Bryson continued, standing to address the stunned guests. "I built everything my family has enjoyed from nothing. I provided a life of privilege and opportunity. And in return, I expected only loyalty and honesty." He turned to Melanie. "You chose neither. So now you face the consequences of that choice, publicly and irrevocably." Rachel was sobbing openly now. "Why?" she asked her mother. "Why would you do this?" Melanie looked frantically around the room, searching for sympathy and finding none. "You don't understand what it's been like," she said desperately. "Living in his shadow, never having my own identity." "Save it," Preston interrupted, approaching the head table. "We all know the truth now. You were willing to hurt everyone, including your own children, for what? For him." He gestured toward Wade, who stood helplessly between the guards. Bryson nodded to the venue manager, who approached with an envelope. "Inside you'll find divorce papers," Bryson told Melanie, "already filed with the court. The terms reflect the infidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement. You leave with what you brought to the marriage, which, as I recall, was very little." He turned to Wade. "As for you, Mr. Thornton, I've taken the liberty of contacting the authorities in Arizona regarding certain financial irregularities in your past. They're quite interested in speaking with you." Wade paled visibly. "You can't do this." "I already have." Bryson turned back to the assembled guests. "I apologize for this unpleasant interlude during what should be a joyous occasion. The celebration will continue for those who wish to stay." He looked at Rachel, whose tears had given way to a stunned numbness. "I'm sorry you had to learn the truth this way, sweetheart. But better today than after they'd taken what was rightfully yours." The aftermath was chaotic. Some guests departed in embarrassment. Others stayed to witness the drama unfold. Melanie, humiliated beyond recovery, fled the ballroom with Wade close behind, only to find their belongings had been removed from the suite they'd shared and placed in the lobby, along with a single economy class ticket back to Havenbrook in Wade's name. The wedding reception continued in subdued fashion, with Rachel and Garrett eventually regaining enough composure to share their first dance. Bryson watched from a distance, his expression unreadable as he sipped his champagne. Preston joined him at the bar. Was all that really necessary? Couldn't you have exposed them privately? Would they have shown me the same consideration? Bryson asked. Besides, public consequences have a way of ensuring the lesson sticks. Rachel may never forgive you for turning her wedding into this. Bryson nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps, but she'll never be deceived by them again, either. Sometimes protection requires difficult choices. As the night wore on, the mood gradually lifted. By the time Rachel and Garrett departed for their honeymoon, genuine smiles had returned to their faces, tempered by the day's revelations, but determined to move forward. Bryson watched them leave, satisfaction mixing with a tinge of regret. The price of justice was high, but necessary. As he had learned long ago, betrayal without consequences only invited more betrayal. Chapter 8. Consequences and Calculations. The days following the wedding brought a whirlwind of aftermath. Melanie retreated to her sister's home in Connecticut, her reputation in shambles among their social circle. Wade disappeared entirely, fleeing to parts unknown after discovering that Bryson had indeed contacted authorities about his history of financial improprieties. Bryson returned to the quiet emptiness of his house, methodically removing Melanie's remaining possessions and placing them in storage. He worked with cold efficiency, erasing her presence from the home they'd shared for over 2 decades. Preston called frequently, concerned about his father's emotional state. "Are you actually okay?" he asked during one such call. "You've ended a 24-year marriage and publicly humiliated Mom in the span of a few months." "I'm fine," Bryson assured him. This was inevitable once her true nature revealed itself. "That's not a normal reaction, Dad. What would you prefer? That I fall apart? Beg her to return? Some betrayals can't be forgiven, Preston. You'll understand that someday." The truth was more complex than Bryson admitted. Each night, alone in his study, he reviewed the surveillance photos of Melanie and Wade, searching for the moment when everything changed. When had his wife of 24 years decided he was disposable? When had protecting his family transformed into dismantling it? 1 week after the wedding, Rachel returned early from her honeymoon. She arrived at Bryson's door unannounced, her expression a mixture of anger and confusion. "We need to talk," she said as he invited her in. They sat in the living room, the space between them heavy with unspoken recriminations. "You humiliated Mom in front of everyone I know," Rachel began. "You turned my wedding into a public execution." Bryson nodded, accepting the accusation. "I revealed the truth. Timing and method were my choice, yes. Why that way? Why not tell me privately? Give me a chance to process it. Would you have believed me without evidence? Would you have accepted that your mother and Wade were manipulating Garrett to access your trust fund?" Rachel looked away. "I don't know. Exactly. And by then, it would have been too late. The money would be gone. Your mother vanished to Arizona with her lover. You could have stopped them without destroying my wedding day. Perhaps. But remember who initiated this destruction, Rachel. It wasn't me who planned to leave immediately after your wedding. It wasn't me who tried to bar your father from attending. It wasn't me who conspired with your fiancée behind her back." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I keep asking myself what was real. Was Mom ever really excited about my wedding? Or was it all just cover for her escape plan?" Bryson moved to sit beside her, his voice softening. "Your mother loves you, Rachel. That part was real. But she made choices that placed her desires above your well-being. I couldn't allow that to continue. Garrett told me everything. About Wade approaching him, about Mom's encouragement, and about how he confessed to you. He made the right choice in the end. Because you threatened him. I gave him a choice," Bryson corrected. "He could continue betraying you or stand by your side honestly. He chose you." Rachel wiped away her tears. "This isn't how I imagined starting my marriage. Few things in life unfold as we imagine them. The question is how we respond to the reality we're given." She studied her father's face, searching for something in his impassive expression. "You don't seem hurt by any of this. 24 years of marriage ends, and you're just cold. What purpose would emotional displays serve? Would they change what happened? Would they undo Melanie's betrayal? It would show you're human, Dad." Bryson smiled faintly. "I'm very human, Rachel. But I learned long ago that allowing emotions to dictate actions leads to vulnerability. Your mother took advantage of that vulnerability in others, in you and Garrett, even in Wade himself. So what now? We just never speak to Mom again. That decision is yours to make. My path is clear. Rachel stood to leave, pausing at the door. Garrett and I are staying with his parents until we figure things out. I need time to process everything. Take all the time you need. The truth doesn't change with time, only our ability to accept it. After she left, Bryson returned to his office and made a call to Harrison. The divorce proceedings? He asked without preamble. Moving forward as planned, Harrison replied. Melanie's attorney has requested a settlement conference, but given the prenup and evidence of infidelity, they have little leverage. And the Sedona property Wade purchased traced back to funds Melanie withdrew. We've included it in the filing as evidence of financial misconduct. Good. Keep me updated. That evening, as Bryson reviewed documents in his study, the doorbell rang. To his surprise, Garrett stood on the doorstep, looking uncomfortable but determined. Mr. Hardgrove, I need to talk to you. Bryson invited him in. Rachel mentioned you were staying with your parents. We are, but there's something you should know. Garrett handed him a phone. Wade contacted me today. He wants to make a deal. On the screen was a text message. Tell your father-in-law I have information he wants. About Melanie's other plans. About people she contacted regarding his business. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow, 3 p.m. Come alone or no deal. Bryson's expression darkened. What other plans? I don't know. He wouldn't say, more over text. Why come to me with this? Why not go alone as he asked? Garrett met his gaze steadily. Because I'm done with secrets and lies. Rachel deserves better, and so do you. Bryson nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. You've made the right choice. Again, what will you do? Meet him, of course, but not alone. The following afternoon, Bryson arrived at Riverside Park 15 minutes early, accompanied by Thorne, who positioned himself discreetly nearby. At precisely 3 p.m., Wade appeared, looking considerably less polished than at the wedding. His designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a rumpled jacket. His confident swagger diminished. You didn't come alone, Wade observed, glancing toward Thorne. Neither did you, Bryson replied, nodding toward a woman sitting on a bench pretending to read. Melanie couldn't resist being part of this, could she? Wade's surprise confirmed the guess. We need to talk about our mutual future. We have no mutual future, Mr. Thornton. We could. I have information you'll find valuable. Information about whom Melanie contacted regarding your business practices. Bryson smiled thinly. You mean her pathetic attempts to find dirt on my company? The calls to former employees, to regulatory agencies, to business competitors? I've known about those for months. Wade's confidence faltered. Then you know she found someone willing to testify about irregularities in your land acquisitions. Fiction. My business practices are aggressive but impeccable. Harrison ensures that. Bryson stepped closer. Is this really the deal you wanted to offer? Vague insinuations about non-existent improprieties? I can convince Melanie to drop the divorce fight. Wade countered desperately. To accept the prenup terms without dragging your name through litigation. The prenup is ironclad. Her litigation would only further humiliate her. Bryson glanced toward Melanie's hiding spot. Is that what you want, Melanie? More public humiliation. After a moment's hesitation, Melanie emerged from behind the bench, her face tight with anger. You've taken everything from me, she said, approaching them. My home, my dignity, my children's respect. You surrendered those things willingly when you chose betrayal, Bryson replied. Don't blame me for the consequences of your actions. I gave you 24 years of my life, and I gave you everything money could buy. The difference is I honor my vows. Wade stepped between them. We're willing to disappear completely. No contest on the divorce, no contact with Rachel or Preston, no attempts to access any funds. In exchange for a reasonable settlement. Bryson laughed coldly. A reasonable settlement? You think you're in a position to negotiate. Everyone has a price, Wade insisted. Even you. True, but yours is far lower than you imagine. Bryson turned to Melanie. You'll receive exactly what the prenup stipulates. The assets you brought to the marriage, adjusted for inflation. Nothing more. That's practically nothing, she protested. Precisely. Bryson checked his watch. This conversation is over. Any further contact will be through our attorneys. As he turned to leave, Melanie called after him. Was any of it real for you, Bryson? Our marriage, our family? Or was it all just another business acquisition? He paused, considering the question. It was real until you made it transactional. Until Wade convinced you I was just an ATM to fund your next chapter. I loved you once, she said quietly. Perhaps, but not enough to honor that love when tested. Bryson nodded to Thorne, who approached to escort him away. Goodbye, Melanie. As they walked toward the parking lot, Thorne asked, Do you want me to continue surveillance on them? No, they're irrelevant now. Focus on Rachel and Garrett. Make sure they're truly clear of this mess. That night, alone in his study, Bryson opened his journal and made a final entry about Melanie. The price of betrayal has been paid in full. Chapter closed. Chapter 9. Empire of Ashes. 3 months after the wedding, life had settled into a new pattern. Bryson immersed himself in work, expanding Hargrove Enterprises with a series of aggressive acquisitions. The Belridge Hotel was renovated completely and rebranded as the flagship property of a new hospitality division. Preston returned to medical school, calling regularly but maintaining some emotional distance. Rachel and Garrett purchased a home in a neighboring town, rebuilding their relationship on more honest foundations. Their visits to Bryson were cordial but guarded. The divorce was finalized with minimal drama. Melanie accepted the prenuptial terms after her attorney confirmed the evidence against her made any challenge futile. She received a settlement that barely covered first month's rent on a modest apartment. Wade, facing potential charges in Arizona, disappeared entirely. On a crisp autumn evening, Bryson hosted a small dinner at his home, the first since Melanie's departure. Preston had returned for the weekend, and Rachel and Garrett joined them. The conversation remained carefully neutral, focusing on Preston's studies and Garrett's recent promotion. After dinner, as Bryson poured drinks in the living room, Rachel finally breached the unspoken boundary. Have you heard from Mom? Bryson handed her a glass. No, the divorce is final. There's nothing more to discuss. She called me last week, Rachel said cautiously. She's struggling. The money from the divorce barely covered her expenses for a month. Her financial situation is no longer my concern. Preston joined the conversation. She's living in a studio apartment and working as a sales associate at a department store. It's a pretty dramatic fall. Choices have consequences, Bryson replied. She chose Wade and his promises over her family. The outcome was predictable. She says Wade cleaned out their joint account and disappeared. Rachel continued. She has nothing left. Again, not my concern. Rachel set down her glass. You really feel nothing for her? After 24 years. I feel many things, Rachel. Disappointment, vindication, relief, but not responsibility for her current circumstances. She's the mother of your children, Preston pointed out, and she was willing to abandon those children for a con man with a smooth line of talk. Does motherhood absolve her of that betrayal? The siblings exchanged glances, recognizing the immovability in their father's tone. We're not asking you to take her back, Rachel clarified. Just maybe ensure she's not destitute. Bryson considered this for a moment. Your concern for her is natural. You're better people than she deserves. But understand this. Forgiveness without consequences isn't mercy. It's enabling. Melanie needs to rebuild her life on her own terms, just as she chose to destroy her old one. The subject was dropped, but later, as Garrett helped Bryson clear the dessert plates, he offered a different perspective. They still love her, you know, despite everything. Bryson nodded, as they should. My issues with Melanie shouldn't dictate their relationship with her mother. And what about you? Garrett asked hesitantly. Is there any path to, I don't know, not reconciliation, but peace? Peace comes from justice, Garrett. Justice has been served. I am at peace. The truth was more complex. In the quiet hours after his children left, Bryson found himself standing in what had been Melanie's garden, now neglected and overgrown. He'd instructed the groundskeeper to leave it untended, a physical manifestation of what happens when nurturing ceases. His phone rang, breaking the moment of reflection. An unfamiliar number. Mr. Hargrove? A woman's voice, professionally neutral. This is Mercy Hospital in Philadelphia. We have you listed as the emergency contact for Melanie Hargrove. Bryson's grip tightened on the phone. Ex-wife. What's happened? Mrs. Hargrove was admitted following a suicide attempt. She's stable but sedated. Hospital policy requires us to notify emergency contacts. I understand. Thank you for the information. Bryson ended the call, staring at the dying garden. He should feel something, he thought. Grief, perhaps. Concern. Instead, he felt a cold certainty that this, too, was part of the natural consequence of betrayal. The ultimate manipulation tactic, using self-harm to force a response. He called Preston first. Their son should know about his mother's condition. Then Rachel. Both immediately made plans to travel to Philadelphia. Neither asked if Bryson would join them. They already knew the answer. In the days that followed, Bryson received regular updates from Preston. Melanie was recovering physically but struggling mentally. The hospital was arranging psychiatric care. She kept asking if Bryson knew, if he had responded in any way. What should I tell her? Preston asked during one call. The truth, Bryson replied. That I was notified as her emergency contact. That I informed you and Rachel immediately. That my involvement ends there. That's cold, Dad. It's honest. Would you prefer I pretend concern I don't feel? Preston sighed. Sometimes I wonder if you ever loved her at all. The question lingered after they hung up. Had he loved Melanie? Certainly. He had believed he did. He had provided for her every material desire, protected her from hardship, given her a life of privilege. Was that not love? Or had it been, as she claimed in those final confrontations, merely another business transaction, stability and status for her, loyalty and family for him? A week later, Bryson received an unexpected visitor. Garrett arrived alone, looking uncomfortable but determined. Rachel doesn't know I'm here, he began. But I needed to talk to you man to man. About Melanie? About forgiveness. Garrett sat across from Bryson in the study. Not for Melanie's sake, but for yours. Bryson raised an eyebrow. You think I need forgiveness? I think holding on to this level of resentment comes at a cost. I've watched you systematically dismantle Melanie's life. The divorce, the public humiliation, cutting off all financial support. You've won every battle. At what point is it enough? An interesting perspective from someone who nearly betrayed my daughter for financial gain. Garrett flinched but held his ground. Fair point. But you gave me a chance to redeem myself, to prove I truly love Rachel. Shouldn't 24 years of marriage earn at least that much? The length of betrayal doesn't mitigate its severity. Quite the opposite. I'm not suggesting reconciliation or even direct contact. Just a recognition that she's the mother of your children. That complete destitution serves no one's interest, least of all Rachel and Preston's. Bryson studied the younger man thoughtfully. You've become quite the advocate for compassion. Rachel is devastated by her mother's suicide attempt. She blames herself for not helping more. And yes, she blames you for your inflexibility. And you think financial support would solve this? I think it would show your children that your capacity for vengeance has limits. That somewhere inside you, there's still humanity that transcends business calculations. After Garrett left, Bryson sat alone in his study for hours, contemplating the situation. Not from an emotional perspective, but through the cold logic that had guided him since childhood. Was his continued refusal to offer Melanie any assistance beyond the divorce settlement truly in his best interest? Or was it, as Garrett suggested, exacting a cost he hadn't fully calculated? Rachel and Preston were distancing themselves. His reputation in certain circles had suffered, not from exposing Melanie's betrayal, which most people understood, but from the ruthlessness of his response. Even Harrison had tactfully suggested that some minimal support might be strategically advisable to maintain family harmony. The next morning, Bryson called his attorney, set up a small monthly stipend for Melanie, enough to cover basic expenses for a modest apartment. No lump sum, no direct contact. The payments stop immediately if she attempts any publicity or litigation. A wise decision, Harrison approved. May I ask what changed your mind? Nothing changed, Bryson replied. This is simply the most efficient resolution to an ongoing distraction. He didn't mention Garrett's visit or the growing realization that his children's perception of him mattered more than he'd admitted. This wasn't forgiveness, it was strategic adaptation. That evening, he received a text from Rachel. "Preston told me what you did. Thank you." No further explanation was needed. The gesture, minimal as it was, had been registered and appreciated. Not a victory, but perhaps a small step toward repairing the damage to his relationship with his children. 1 month later, Bryson hosted a small gathering at his home to celebrate Preston's acceptance into a prestigious surgical residency program. Rachel and Garrett attended, along with a few close friends. The atmosphere was warmer than previous gatherings, the conversation easier. As the evening wound down, Rachel joined Bryson on the patio, where he stood watching the stars. "Mom's doing better," she said without preamble. "The therapy seems to be helping. She's found a better job at a boutique downtown." "I'm glad to hear it," Bryson replied, surprised to find he meant it. Not for Melanie's sake, but for his children's. "She asked me to thank you for the stipend. She knows it doesn't mean forgiveness." "It doesn't." Rachel nodded, understanding. "You know, I used to think you and Mom were so different. She was emotional, gregarious, expressive. You were logical, reserved, controlled. But you're actually similar in one important way." "How so?" "Neither of you knows how to bend. Mom couldn't adapt to the limitations of marriage and family. You can't adapt to the possibility of forgiveness." Bryson considered this assessment. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply understand that some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt." "Maybe." Rachel leaned against the railing beside him. "But I've learned something important from all this." "What's that?" "That love without forgiveness becomes poison. For everyone involved." She squeezed his arm gently. "I don't expect you to forgive Mom, but I hope someday you can let go of the anger. For your sake, not hers." After his children left, Bryson returned to his study and opened the leather journal that had documented his journey. He turned to the final entry about Melanie and added a single line. "The price of betrayal includes collateral damage. Minimizing that damage is not weakness, it's strategy." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was, perhaps, the first acknowledgement that the ruthless pursuit of justice had limits. Not because the betrayer deserved mercy, but because those caught in the crossfire deserved protection. Bryson Hargrove would never again trust Melanie. He would never welcome Wade Thornton's name in his presence. The betrayal would remain an unforgivable breach in his carefully constructed world. But as he closed the journal and looked out at the night sky, he recognized that true victory lay not in destruction, but in rebuilding. His relationship with his children, his focus on the future, his empire of achievement rather than ashes. The price of betrayal had been paid in full. The true cost of vengeance was still being calculated. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end,